Hi, and welcome or welcome back to the Future of SaaS Festival. We hope you're enjoying the presentation so far. Just a quick reminder, if you're not already a member of our Slack community, follow the link at the top of the event website to network and join the discussion.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to get started, and I'm actually going to jam a ton of information into the next 30 minutes really quickly, so I'm going to jump in. Of course, you can get the slides afterwards, and I believe Gemma, our wonderful host, posted my LinkedIn, so that's always a good place to reach me if we don't get to any questions that you have. But let's go ahead and talk about adding sales to product-led growth and how do we do that. I'm an operating partner at Arthur Ventures. We invest in B2B software companies that are located outside of Silicon Valley. I work with our partner companies on their go-to-market strategies. I spend a lot of time on product-led sales, product-led growth. I also blog at saasx.com, and another place to reach me is on Twitter at Anna Tallarico. So let's jump in. Who is this session for? First and foremost, are you in the right place? If you're in B2B, if you have product market fit and a thriving self-service channel, and that's usually what we're seeing in product-led growth, right? A self-service channel where people can buy online. And if you've got nascent or non-existent sales so far, or you're struggling to get sales going because you've been primarily product-led, this is the session for you. And if you're just interested in this topic in general too, hopefully we'll cover some stuff that will be relevant. If you've been in here in the product-led sessions today, you know what product-led growth is. I just like to talk about one of the ways that I view it because I'm a little bit of a purist. When we think about product-led growth at Arthur Ventures, we think about a really specific go-to-market approach that relies on a self-service customer acquisition channel where people are buying and they're expanding and they're renewing without ever talking to a person from the company. So this is truly a self-service model where the product is leading and people can try it, buy it, expand, and renew, all without ever interacting. So that's the kind of setting the stage of the type of company we're talking about. And of course, with product-led growth, it is a product that inherently sells itself, right? So a lot of our biggest sort of brightest stars in product-led growth that we think of, like Atlassian and Dropbox and Slack, start product-led, but that eventually, to continue to fuel their growth and their expansion, they add in some type of sales organization. So if you are running product-led and you're struggling right now to get sales sort of stood up inside of your organization, if you're thinking that maybe adding sales to a product-led company can mess everything up that you've got going on, you are right. There's a lot of ways to do this that kind of actually impedes your amazing product-led growth that you've already got. And we're actually going to talk about a lot of ways today to not mess it up, right? How do you take an existing high growth channel, like you've got going with product-led, and start to add in sales in a way that complements product-led growth. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in, and definitely feel free to ask any questions along the way. I'll get to as many as I can. And again, I'm going to go really fast through these 7 ways. The first thing I always say when we're talking to a product-led company that's going to add in sales is that we have to be wary of the standard SaaS inside sales model. In SaaS, there is a playbook. It's a playbook that we've all run for 15 plus years. It was popular from the book Predictable Revenue, which was a model that Salesforce used that was really successful. And that sort of standard playbook, right, is we have, we think about our funnel in like marketing generated leads to sales accepted leads to sales qualified leads to opportunities to customers. And we just have this funnel. We might call it different things, but that's the sort of standard funnel that we see in sales driven organizations. And there's a model too about the roles that we have. We have SDRs who reach out to leads, who qualify them, to book appointments. for the account executives. And this is, just kind of standard stuff. So the thing about this is that we can adapt this. But one of the biggest mistakes that product-led companies make is just trying to apply that model without any kind of modifications. So the thing about it is that we have to be really careful, because the sort of standard sales playbook for SaaS, it's actually got too much process. It's too formal, and we don't often need it to close deals. So we want to be very thoughtful about what's happening in the business, and how we can kind of use the best parts of the SaaS sales playbook to kind of adapt and honor what's already happening in product-led growth. So the first thing we want to do is assess what's working, right? Are customers raising their hand to buy outside of the self-service channel already? We see that a lot. How are customers buying today? How are they trying to buy? We're going to talk a lot about that today. How are they trying to buy? How much are they buying? How are they paying? Who's buying? And why are they buying? And then 2, are customers expanding, and how are they doing that, right? So to really understand what our customer acquisition looks like, and to try and understand too, how are customers wanting to buy, so we assess before we apply any new sort of playbooks to a product-led model. But this kind of assessing then leads to this idea of expanding your definition of self-service. So what we tend to find in really successful product-led companies is a very defined, sort of a definition of where and how customers can buy. And oftentimes that looks like all customers under 50 seats have to buy online. They have to buy with a credit card. And what we want to do is actually look at how are customers wanting to buy, and are we forcing them into lanes and being overly prescriptive about that and leaving money on the table? We see this a lot, right? So what we have to do is listen to what's happening in our channels of communication with customers and prospective customers, and not always force people into a very specific path. And we'll talk about some ways to do that today. But when you hear customers, kind of coming into support, let's say, saying things like, where can I send my purchase order? Can I wire payment? I need to give my credit card information over the phone. Or I need an invoice before I can pay. Can I send a check? A lot of times in product-led, where everybody's just buying online without interacting with sales, if you actually listen to what customers are saying, they're asking questions like this because they want to buy in a very product-led way, but they have ways that they can buy that might be outside of that credit card sort of linear path. So it's really important that we actually listen to what the customers are saying and how they're asking, because a lot of times you see these kinds of questions coming in, like, let's say, to support or chat, and what you see is that they're just being redirected back to that self-service channel. And so what it means is we've got a lot of just sort of low-hanging fruit money on the table. So we want to just kind of think about not being quite so rigorous and literal with how we define these paths to purchase, right? So we don't want to say you can only buy online if you're under 50 seats, or you can only buy offline if you're over 50 seats even. So we really have to pay attention. And the theme I always say on this one is get out of the way and just let them buy, right? So stop thinking about qualification and reps that get this kind of deal and these kinds of deals are online. So we have to create a sales process and a methodology that is flexible enough to adapt to these ready to close leads and these ready to expand customers. Because if we try and force some of these into like a sales process or back into the self-service channel, we will definitely be getting in the way of how they want to buy, and we'll be losing some of those customers. The other way to do this that we'll talk about is like matrixing sales and support together so that we're capturing those users that do reach out through the support channel. A lot of times in product-led growth, you see these customers trying to buy or wanting to buy or asking just one or two questions before they can buy. you see that happening in the support channel. So what you want to do is operationalize the support channel to handle that. In fact, we have one partner company, one of our portfolio companies has a very innovative model. They don't have customer success, they don't have sales, they just have a support team. And that support team can demo, they can answer sales questions, they can close customers, they can support customers after they close, they handle onboarding, they handle expansion. So truly, support has become the epicenter of the customer experience, whether it's during the awareness phase all the way through the sort of retention and expansion phase. They're a really fast growing company. This model is scaling really well, and it's very customer centric. And that's what we see a lot of in product-led growth, is that the support channel is actually catching a lot of this type of stuff. And what we don't want to do is like force it out of the support channel. So thinking about how can sales and support sort of align and matrix together to create an experience that gets out of the way of customers who want to buy and just helps enable that. Another thing that we see here is when we have these like binary rules about how somebody can buy, like let's say, if it's 50 seats or under, they have to buy online. And so we lose customers that way. There are ways that we can help these customers, right? So we can use like a deal desk or a sales operations or sales coordinator role to help those customers buy. Doesn't have to be a commissioned sales rep, nor should it be, right? But we can take a just sort of somebody who can help those customers transact, whether that person sits in sales or marketing or support, doesn't matter, but they're basically there to help these customers that are falling outside of the normal sort of self-service channel, so we can serve those customers too. And this is what a lot of pure product-led companies that have only sold online miss. They miss these customers that are, and the prospective customers that are just outside of that self-service channel that's happening online. So there are a lot of ways that we can find all of those people that are just falling outside of that funnel and gather them up and help them buy. And so this becomes one of the most important things that you can do as you're transitioning to add some sales into a product-led growth, sort of story. Is it doesn't have to be traditional AEs. Let's enable support to do this, or let's think about a sort of sales coordinator that does this, that is not commissioned. So a lot of creative ways to do this, and it's important that we just get creative about how we do that. So your theme really needs to be get out of the way and let those customers buy. All right. The next thing is designing your organization to maximize this organic growth. And I kind of just talked about this. What we see in the most successful organizations that add in sales to product-led is this tight alignment or matrixing for sales, customer success, and support, and oftentimes under the same leadership. Because if you think about our customers, right, they don't think support, customer success, sales. They're just thinking, what is their relationship with the company? Who are they interacting with? Where do they go when they have a question, when they need something? And oftentimes we just have these, as we try and scale, we get this specialization in roles, and that creates a really disjointed customer experience, and that can inhibit, for sure, it can inhibit new sales, as we just talked about, but it can also inhibit even expansion, sales. So what I love to see is the most modern product-led companies, like the portfolio company I mentioned, starting to just have an approach that just serves the customers and kind of breaks down these walls between these different departments, and doesn't lean quite as heavily on the role specialization. Role specialization inside of sales-led companies has been a big part of how these companies sort of scale really efficiently, how they hire talent very quickly and get them onboarded and ramped up. It's by having such a role sort of so specified and narrow that they can do that at scale very quickly. But if you really think about, is that serving the customer, and is it serving the customer in a product-led way, it's really not. So I'd love to see it when these organizations are under the same leadership umbrella. I love to see innovative approaches where maybe they're one organization. And there's a lot of creativity here that you can bring to this. But this is really important to start to look at all the customer touch points that we have, and making sure that we're touching every customer, right? We're touching every prospective customer in a way that's really unified. We were in a panel earlier today, the Future of SaaS panel, and we got to spend a little bit of time talking about this idea of customer centricity and how to create an experience that's really unified, and puts the customer at the center of it. And in product-led growth, this is really important that we not sort of scale in this highly segmented, highly specialized way. And we do less role specialization, actually, and we empower everybody on the team, regardless if it's, we have these kinds of 3 departments. We empower everyone to serve the customer in a way that meets the customer where they're at. So this one becomes really important. All right, number 4. Building a world-class expansion team. So if you think about how our biggest sort of most famous product-led companies have started, they've certainly started without inside sales, without sales at all. Again, the Dropboxes, the Slacks of the world. But at some point, they layer in sales. And oftentimes that first sort of sales motion that they add in is actually around expansion. And the reason is that if you think about product-led, the product is doing the work, right? They're landing the customer. And oftentimes the product too is expanding, and that's happening organically. But what happens in that motion is that our users are choosing us, which is exactly what we want, right? Our users find us, they start to use us, they see value, it spreads, and now we have more and more users, and we're organically expanding. But what hasn't happened in that kind of environment is that we are not having the company choose us. And this is where sales can be really helpful, right? So we want the product to land, we want users to choose us and to grow organically through that. But then at some point, to have true enterprise adoption and true enterprise relationships, we have to have the company choose us too. And that takes a sales motion. No product can really do that on its own. Just to build the kinds of relationships and navigate through the internal parts of working within a company, a sales team can do that. And so what you really want to think about is building a world-class expansion team. And this can so accelerate growth, especially if you have this natural organic growth and expansion already happening, right? And we'll talk a little bit about how can we expand in our next slide. But I would just think through, what are the types of people that can come in and build strong relationships with your largest customers, your biggest customers, and do that in a way that honors the product-led growth as well, right? So product-led is happening. We just want to add to that, not get in the way of that. So this is a super important one. Another one is thinking about reinventing the role of the SDR. We're actually going to spend a little bit of time on this one because this is a really important one. Going back to adapting the SaaS sales playbook, the standard one, part of that SaaS playbook is having sales development representatives or business development representatives, so SDRs and BDRs, and they are typically, they're calling leads to qualify, to make contact, qualify, and set up appointments for AEs, or they're calling dream accounts, right? They're calling your top, 1,000 dream accounts in like a cold outbound kind of outreach to make contact, qualify, and set appointments. So in one hand, you would think, well, maybe there's not a role for the SDR then in product-led growth, but actually the SDR role can be kind of like a Swiss Army knife. And there's a lot that an SDR kind of role can do inside of a product-led organization. So while you might think product-led doesn't need SDRs, actually lots of ways to sort of maximize that. So one of the ways is for the standard SaaS sort of playbook, right? Have SDRs reach out to marketing generated leads. So if you've been primarily product led, your customer acquisition channel is all online, but you're also probably generating leads who haven't yet bought, right? Maybe they're subscribing to a newsletter, maybe they are, downloading a white paper or some kind of sheet, maybe they're attending a webinar. So although you're acquiring customers online primarily, you are likely building a database of marketing generated leads who are not yet customers, who have not yet purchased or started a trial online. So one of the simplest things you can do is just start to reach out to those companies, right? To sort of warm them up, try and make contact and qualify them. So you can do sort of like a pure SDR motion against the leads that you're probably generating. You can also do cold outbound leads. So a lot of times, this is an interesting one because for a product-led company, this can be like pushing a boulder up a hill. But in product-led, we're often, even if we're doing things to attract our ideal customer profile, we're oftentimes maybe having a target customer that we're not always getting, right? So maybe there's a dream list of 100 customers that aren't yet in buying online. So you can have an SDR motion actually trying to develop some of those relationships. You can be primarily product led, but add an outbound motion to go get your most ideal customers that aren't there yet. And if you're interested in this topic, like how do you add outbound to product led, I've got a whole article about that. So feel free to grab me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to send it to you. It's pretty detailed because adding outbound to product led is something that a lot of product-led organizations struggle with, but it can be a great way to go get your dream 100 customers or your dream 1,000 customers. So it's worth exploring. And of course, that's going to, largely be done by a BDR or an SDR. But here's where the magic happens, right? So when we think about this SDR role and how can we leverage that role inside of a product-led company, what about reaching out to our individual business users? So that user who signed up for a free trial and maybe then went on to buy a couple of seats, like what about reaching out to them to see, are there other users inside of the organization? So often we are just expecting the product to organically expand our customers, but it can happen faster if we start to have a dialogue with our customers, right? So a good classic sort of version of this, the one I always throw around and use, is that maybe IBM bought through the self-service channel and they bought 6 seats. And maybe another team bought another 6 seats and some other team bought 20 seats. Well, those teams might be doing some organic expansion, which is great. That's what you want in product-led. But what happens when we start to call them and just say, hey, how's it going? Is there anything I can do? Are there any peers that might want to also be in on this? Or is there anybody else inside of the organization we can be talking to? That can be a really powerful way to capture more expansion revenue, is to just reach out to individuals who might be using it. Maybe they're just kicking around trying it, and now you call and you start to create a communication pathway person to person, not just online, and you're bringing your product up sort of top of mind. So this can be a great one. Another way to do that is to reach out to decision makers. So one thing is you can reach out to individuals and say, hey, I'd love to talk to your manager. Who should we be talking to about, bringing this product into your company in a broader way? A lot of times when you reach out to individuals, they're happy to share that information, right? Maybe they're paying for your product themselves to solve an acute problem that they have, or maybe they're paying for it themselves and they're submitting for a reimbursement. So if you call to say, hey, who can I talk to? Can I talk to your manager about this, or somebody in your department? A lot of times you'd be surprised how happy users are to provide that information because they'd love the product to be purchased more centrally. And then you can just kind of do outreach too. Like if you see a 6-person team that bought on the self-service channel from IBM and another 20-person team, you start to think, you see more and more of these little teams, popping up in isolated ways. listen, like IBM has a use case here. So you can start to reach out to decision makers just on your own to just open up that dialogue to say, hey, there are people inside of your organization using this. Let's talk about why. Let's talk about how we might be able to solve challenges or problems for those users and do that in a more comprehensive way. So just opening up the dialogue with the people that are already in your user base that you acquired from the product itself. And then doing something similar to reach out to new divisions, right? And new teams and departments. You can call with your individual users and ask, hey, do you have colleagues in other departments that should be looking at this? Or you can just do it, right? You can call into a team at IBM and say, hey, did you know a bunch of your colleagues in other teams are using this? Would you like to learn more about why and how, and have me show it to you? So a lot of times in a pure product-led company, this feels unfamiliar, but to us, we think, oh, reaching out to users that just signed up online. But these are powerful ways to build relationships with our customers and to start to, create more pathways to expansion and to retention for sure. So, examples are like outreaching to a marketing generated lead. Call John Smith, who attended a white paper or, attended a webinar or downloaded a white paper. Find out why, see what sparks their interest, see if you can kind of, maybe you can drive them into an online trial, even something like that. Call Jane Smith, a decision maker and an ideal customer profile account. Reach out to, an individual IT user that registered with their company, their work email address, and just open up that dialogue. So lots of ways to do this. And I just like to get really creative with these SDR roles because they can really help us touch a lot of customers that maybe came in through the product-led channel or aren't coming in through the product-led channel, and we want them to. And then really consider who and how, right? So this goes back to our orange slide of our matrix teams, right? Who's doing this? Should it be sales? Should it be customer success? Should it be support? Just thinking about what's the right customer experience and what's the right ownership for this type of motion. And just ask for the referral, nurture some organic growth. It's kind of, if you think about product led, it's like the classic bottoms up motion. A user uses it, and then 2 users are using it, and then 3, and suddenly, you've got 5,000 people using Slack. So that's really bottoms up. And just, thinking about adding in a top down layer with this SDR role, but do be thinking about who should own it and how to kind of get something like that off the ground. And if you reach out to me, I'm so happy to share more on this topic. It's definitely a big one. All right, just a couple more. I know we're nearing the top, and I said I was going to jam a lot in. This one's a controversial one, and that is when being thoughtful about your sales compensation. Again, going back to that standard sort of SaaS sales playbook, there are standard metrics. There's a standard way we do commission and on-target earnings and quota and all of this stuff that doesn't really apply to the first early sales teams inside of sales organizations. So you're going to get what you're incentivized. And a lot of times if I come into a product-led organization that's got some salespeople, what I find out is that we're probably paying commission to those salespeople for just taking phone orders, right? Like they have people that are calling in saying, I'm ready to buy it. Where do I send my PO? And yet we're compensating them as though they have worked through a sales process with the prospect. But meanwhile, they had a 10-minute call, close that customer, and they're getting commission. So this is controversial. I grew up as a sales leader. I love salespeople. They are my people. But I also don't think that we do a service to salespeople by giving them commission on customers that the product and marketing brought us that are ready to buy. So I don't think that even, sales is a profession, and taking phone orders is not part of that. So I like to take that kind of, one call close, ready to buy. Maybe they just have one question. And I like to send it to that sort of sales coordinator, deal desk type of role to get them to do that without commission. And that can work really well. And then you can really structure your sales compensation around that expansive growth that we talked about, expansion, right? So your farmers, incentivize account growth and expansion and adoption, that type of thing. And also outbound. If outbound's important, if you want to go after those, top 100 ideal accounts, highly compensate outbound if that's strategically important to you. So compensate what's strategically important to you and align your comp plan against that. Don't compensate sales reps to just transact things offline that, the product got that customer ready. So be really thoughtful about that for sure. That's super important. And last but not least, just think product-led, sales assisted, right? This gets into it, right? So think about just how can sales assist getting this customer to close. I always think again, get out of the way of how they want to buy. Just get out of the way, right? The customer's on a path to the basket. How do we help get that ball into the basket and not get in their way? So think about not being sort of sales process and sales rigor and segmentation around all this stuff, and just more think about what is it like an assistance that we can provide to customers to buy. And that's really the sort of big picture philosophical way to think about adding sales in to your product-led growth. I think I'm out of time. Gemma, do we have any time for questions, or should I just follow up with everybody afterwards?
No, absolutely. We've got a bit of time for questions, and we have a couple of questions in the chat there. So thank you so much for that presentation. So we've got Jackie first, who says, this is such great advice, but what are the biggest mistakes you've seen when adding sales to a PLG business? And just before you answer, anyone, if you've got any further questions, do drop them in the chat now before we do run out of time.
Yeah, so I think the biggest mistake is too much process, right? Thinking I'm going to go get SDRs and I'm going to get AEs and I'm going to, sort of have this sales process. So if a customer calls, no matter what, they have to, go through the sales process. They have to have discovery and they have to have budget and need and all of this stuff that we typically do in sales. That's the biggest mistake we make versus we've already got customers who want to buy. Let's just find out how to help them buy, right? And I think that's really important, is just being overly prescriptive in the beginning. And kind of what you have to do is come from a place of agility and learning and just adapting to the customers and the market and how customers want to buy and doing it that way first. And then if you want to add outbound, you want to add some standard, just more kind of standard sales playbook stuff, you can. But initially, look at how customers are trying to buy and help them do that before you do anything else.
Absolutely, that totally makes sense. So we have another question. Maybe I've misunderstood, but when sales and CS are working together so closely and or interchangeably, then how do you handle assigning the compensation for each new customer?
Oh, it's such a good question. And that, in SaaS organizations in general, product-led or otherwise, the conversation around who owns revenue numbers is, so hotly debated. The sales own just new logos sales, or do they own, expansion and renewal too? Then does CS own that? And then you add in product led, and suddenly now it's does product own that number too, right? Should product have a sales number that they own? Maybe. So, what's right in each company is going to be unique to that company and the types of customers and the types of markets. But what I really like to see, the ultimate nirvana of this in a true product-led company, is that we're not compensating these things because the product is bringing them in. So we're more, we've got maybe a single sort of department, like a support department, that's doing all of that. And maybe there are bonuses for those people based on, achieving company milestones, but we're not giving an individual a compensation for supporting a customer and helping them buy, or supporting a customer and helping them expand. So I think that we're going to see more of that as product-led continues to take hold. More of this, we don't pay commission for everybody that we close, right? And then you do more of the traditional, listen, we need sales. Product-led organizations still need sales to do the work of expansion, to do the work of going out and bringing in ideal customers. And we compensate that instead of these sort of sales assisted motions. So really, to Jackie's question, is more we don't compensate it. We put in a certain kind of role or a team that does that, and just sort of that sales assistant, and it's not compensated.
Thank you so much. That was a really thorough answer. So hopefully, Jackie, that's answered your question. And thanks, Anna. That's actually all we have time for. But thank you so much for the presentation, for answering the questions, and for taking part in the panel earlier. It's been really great to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you. And I know I talked a lot and jammed a lot in. So if anybody has questions or wants any follow-up material, just reach out. I'm happy to provide it.
Absolutely. You've got Anna's LinkedIn just at the top there. And we also have our Slack community, so you can join and find other attendees and speakers just there to chat. So thanks very much, and hopefully see you again soon.
Thanks, Gemma.
Bye.